On February 6, 1958, the world of football was forever changed by a tragic event that claimed the lives of 23 people, including 8 players from Manchester United Football Club. The Munich air disaster, as it came to be known, occurred when a plane carrying the team and their supporters crashed while attempting to take off from Munich-Riem Airport in West Germany. This narrative explores the events leading up to the disaster, the impact it had on the football community, and the legacy of the Busby Babes, the young and talented team that captured the hearts of millions.
Manchester United, under the management of Sir Matt Busby, was one of the most successful and celebrated football clubs in England during the 1950s. The team, affectionately known as the Busby Babes due to the youth and talent of its players, had won back-to-back English League titles in 1956 and 1957 and were seen as strong contenders for European honours. The team was returning from a European Cup quarter-final match against Red Star Belgrade in Yugoslavia, having secured their place in the semi-finals. The plane, a British European Airways (BEA) airspeed ambassador, was carrying 44 passengers, including players, staff, journalists, and supporters, on the return journey to Manchester. Due to the need for refueling, the plane made a scheduled stop in Munich, where the weather conditions were snowy, and the runway was slick with slush.
After refueling, the aircraft attempted to take off twice, but both attempts were aborted due to engine trouble. The passengers were asked to disembark and wait while the problem was investigated. After some time, they were allowed to reboard the aircraft for a third attempt. At 3:04 p.m., the plane began its takeoff run. However, as it accelerated down the runway, it failed to gain sufficient speed to lift off. The aircraft skidded off the end of the runway, broke through a fence, and collided with a house and a fuel storage shed. The impact caused the plane to break apart and burst into flames. The crash resulted in the deaths of 23 people, including 8 Manchester United players: Jeff Bent, Roger Byrne, Eddie Coleman, Duncan Edwards, who survived the initial crash but died of his injuries 15 days later, Mark Jones, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, and Billy Whalen. Also killed were 3 members of the club staff, 8 journalists, 2 crew members, and 2 other passengers. The disaster devastated the club, the city of Manchester, and the football world at large.
In the immediate aftermath of the crash, rescue efforts were hampered by the fire and the scattered wreckage. Survivors were pulled from the plane by airport staff, emergency responders, and passengers who had escaped the wreckage. Among the survivors were Sir Matt Busby, who was critically injured and spent over 2 months in the hospital, and Bobby Charlton, who would go on to become one of England's greatest footballers. The news of the disaster spread quickly, and the football community was plunged into mourning. The loss of such a talented and promising team was a blow not only to Manchester United but to English football as a whole. Tributes poured in from around the world, and the club received messages of support from fans, fellow clubs, and football associations. Despite the tragedy, Manchester United was determined to carry on. Jimmy Murphy, Busby's assistant, was appointed caretaker manager while Busby recovered. Murphy rallied the remaining players, supplemented by reserves and hastily signed players, to continue the club's campaign in the FA Cup and the European Cup. Remarkably, the team reached the FA Cup final that year, though they were defeated by Bolton Wanderers. The resilience and determination of the players and staff became a source of inspiration for many.
The Munich air disaster had a profound impact on Manchester United and the wider football community. The loss of the Busby Babes, a team that had the potential to dominate European football for years, left a void that took time to heal. However, The club's response to the tragedy demonstrated the strength and unity of the football community. Sir Matt Busby, who had been close to death, eventually recovered and returned to management. He rebuilt the team, and in 1968, a decade after the disaster, Manchester United became the first English club to win the European Cup, defeating Benfica in the final. The victory was seen as a triumph over adversity and a fitting tribute to the players who had lost their lives in Munich. The legacy of the Munich air disaster endures to this day. Every year on February 6th, Manchester United holds a memorial service to honor the victims of the crash. The club's Old Trafford Stadium features a clock and plaque dedicated to the memory of those who died, and the Munich tunnel at the stadium is lined with tributes and images commemorating the Busby Babes. The disaster also led to changes in aviation safety regulations, particularly concerning takeoff procedures in adverse weather conditions. The lessons learned from the crash have contributed to improvements in air travel safety standards. The Munich air disaster remains one of the darkest days in the history of football, but it is also a story of resilience, recovery, and the enduring spirit of a football club and its supporters. The memory of the Busby Babes continues to inspire generations of players and fans, reminding us of the fragility of life and the importance of perseverance in the face of tragedy.
The Munich air disaster of 1958 was a heartbreaking event that shook the world of football and left an indelible mark on Manchester United and its fans. The loss of the Busby Babes was a profound tragedy, but the club's response to the disaster demonstrated the strength and unity of the football community. As we remember the events of that fateful day, we are reminded of the enduring legacy of those who perished and the resilience of those who carried on in their memory. The story of the Munich air disaster is a testament to the power of sport to bring people together, even in the darkest of times.